Welcome. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Count Frightculous, and I will be your guide into the chilling, spooky scariness of the world, and maybe even perhaps the universe. But now, our journey is going to take us down the road of the books of the scary stories of long ago, long ago. And these books were abundant. They were in the thousands and thousands long ago. But since then, they have been kept away in boxes that were left in the dark recesses of the closets, and maybe the basements, or even up in the attic. Basically, anywhere there is clutter. But these books have since been rediscovered, or have been for some time. But when they are rediscovered, a lot of times they are unwanted and they are thrown out with the garbage. Maybe because the contents are too frightening for them, or maybe they just want to make more room for clutter. But either way, these books are still there, and some people have even kept them. But some took them and maybe donated it to charity, or maybe just gave them away or sold them for dirt cheap, pennies on the dollar at the garage sale. You might even find some of the pages of these books lining a bird cage, because you know it's much easier just to change out the paper than trying to scrub the bottom of a cage after the bird releases all of the droppings. Maybe someone didn't have any gift wrapping, and they have a birthday to go to, and so they take the pages from these books to wrap their gifts. Can you imagine the small child ripping open the gift to see what surprise lies within? But in reality, they're actually releasing evil into the world. Now we are going to explore some of these scary stories in these books to see, are they truly scary? Maybe they were just scary then. Is it scary now? We don't know, but we're going to find out. And that is partly what we're here. We're going to review some of these scary stories and go through and find out, what is it about the story is scary? Or maybe, what is it about the book that is just ridiculous? I like to say it could be just plain frightculous. Haha. At the end, we're going to have an official rating of the book on its scariness. And to do that, I have with me here the Demon Baby. Yes, I can't think of too many others that have the credibility or the experience. So make sure you stay to the end to see the official rating of the Demon Baby. Who could that be? Knocking at the door? Well, let's find out. It's none other than the Grim Picker, and he has chosen for us the book of scary stories we are going to review now. But I warn you, do not deny the choice of the Grim Picker. Once the decision is made, it must not be undone. And now, we must begin to review the scary stories. Let's take a closer look at this cover to really see what it is we're going to be looking at now. So the title of the book of scary stories is straightforward enough. It's called Ghost Stories. I have to say right away that this cover draws me in to the spookiness that lies within the pages. We hope, because the orange of the lettering, that's an action color. So it draws some energy into you. And then it's put against this dark background, foreboding background with the spooky specter ghoul ghost there on the cover. It looks a little bit like the Grim Picker. I wonder if that's why he chose this for us. But then the words on it, once you see the words, there's this scary house, right? And then there's this tree coming up, but the tree looks like a giant hand coming down to swipe at you as you run away from the house in fear. Or maybe you're trying to walk into the house because you see the light on up in the top window and you wonder who left the lights on. As you see the imagery and the bold title draws you in, then you read on the front, chilling, thrilling, tales of mystery and suspense. That right there starts to send the shivers down your spine, and you say, ooh, what is lying within these pages? And then even more down at the bottom, it says, inside the silent walls lies a secret only the ghost knows. Well, I have to tell you right now, I want to know the secrets that the ghost knows. I can tell you, as a young person, going into my local 7-Eleven to buy a blood red cherry Slurpee, and I would walk past the newsstand, or I would see the magazine rack, and if I saw this book staring at me with those penetrating eyes of the ghost on the cover, I would not be able to contain myself. I would have to know what is in the scary book of stories here. And I would have to right then, I would want to go ahead and start to open the cover to reveal the secrets that the ghost knows. But as I do, I hear a loud noise behind me. And as I turn, I see it's the clerk of the 7-Eleven. And he's scolding me. Hey, this isn't a library. And as I recoil from his words, I would have to respond back. It's not a cemetery either. Are you ready to review this book of scary stories? I might suggest to you, you may want to go get you a blanket to wrap yourself to help feel more secure in case you think you might be a little frightened by what is contained in the pages of this scary book story. I might also suggest you want to get yourself a snack because you could get a little hungry. You might want to munch on something while we talk about the scariness of these stories. I would suggest some salty popcorn or the salty pretzels. You know, salt is a very pure element that has been used for centuries to protect and ward off the evil and malevolent forces that are out there. So I would think, in my humble opinion, that salty popcorn or salty pretzels would help to keep away evil forces. And for those of you who like to drink, you like to partake into the beverages of the alcohol, the margarita with the salt around the rim. Yes, lots of salt. And the next time somebody tells you, hey, slow down there, you say, hey, I'm protecting myself from the evil. I'm keeping the evil forces away from me. It might work. Okay, and with that, let's review this book of scary stories. There are 4 stories contained in this book, so make sure you stay until the end to get the rating from the Demon Baby, because she will rate the entire book, not each individual story. The whole book will be rating by Demon Baby. So the first story is titled Image of Evil. And this story takes place in a mountain nation, a small mountain nation. It's an Asian nation. We can tell by the artist's rendition. You can see they're wearing military uniforms, and there's an evil dictator who is very full of himself, big ego, and he rules with an iron hand. You can tell he's a very mean man, and that you cross him and you will die. And so there's a small band of rebels who want to take him out, of course. And they've been trying, but they finally get their moment. They get the moment where they can trick him and get him out of the safety of his palace, and then they kill him. But then in the end, all of the men who took place in this killing, they also die too. And so that is the story in a nutshell. That is a quick overview of the story. But how did that happen? How do they die? That's the scary part. How do the men die? And that is what we look at in this story to get an idea of the scariness of it. And here, even in the first panel, so that we can brand this dictator, it says right here, in the mountain nation where he ruled, Hamo's word meant life or death. Hamo is the evil dictator here. It says, but the villagers have no money to pay their taxes. Silence, I have decreed that their crops will be confiscated. It shall be done. We know right there that he is a very bad man, very evil. He would take the food out of his own people's hands. And here on the next panel it says, or on the next page I should say, it says, I have decided that above all else, my people have need of one thing, a great portrait of their beloved Hamo. Hamo is his name. My likeness will soon appear on our coins and postage stamps, wherever our proud brethren gather. You agree, Slick? His name is Slick. It's a very good name, I guess. It is an ingenious idea, great leader, and I know just the artist. And he says, don't bother me with details. And he goes and he says, now he comes up with the idea. And these men plot, the rebels plot. And they say, if we can get him out of the palace, away from his safety, we can then take him out and free our people from his evil rule. Of course, his advisors warn him against leaving and say, do not do it. This is a trick. Your enemies could be out to get you. But Hamo is so full of himself. His ego takes over and he says, no, I'll be okay. If anything happens, I will defend myself. Because they tell him that the artist wants to paint him in his studio alone. And for some reason, Hamo does agree to this. You would think you could take your guard with you and they could escort you there. They could, do a preliminary search around the studio to make sure it's safe, and then Hamo could go in. But that doesn't take place. Obviously, the story would end very quickly and there would be nothing really scary about it. So he does go in alone with this artist, and we find out the artist had already painted a lot of the painting. And so the only thing left was to fill in the face, basically. So he's upset. He thinks there is a trick. But he says, no, we just didn't want to waste your time, great leader. And he says, you are very clever, Slick, but in the future I demand to know your plans if you want to remain in my good graces. He looks very evil there. Look at him, his face. But look in the back. The painter is starting to paint. And he says, my greatest wish is that your last thoughts are of me, leader. He says, my last thoughts, this is a trick, Slick. You'll pay with your miserable life when I call my guard. There are others waiting to see you first, tyrant. And they bust in and they say, you will die. And he says, Krill, my secret police swore they had driven you and your cutthroats into the mountains. Even if they had chained me to the highest peak, I would have managed to settle our score, Hamo. You know what must be done, friends. Get on with it. And he says, you'll all pay with your lives. I'll have you shackled and And he says, even if I am to die, I swear that you'll all come with me. And as soon as he says that, the painter had finished the portrait. And he says, the portrait is finished. And at that moment, they kill Hamo. And now they say, we must take his body. Now this is another part I want to say. I want to point this out. It says, into the river with the bloodthirsty wretch. In the new regime which I will have, I want no trace of the hated Hamo. But then, as we go, just 2 panels later, he says, it will hang from the wall of our headquarters so that Hamo can look down and witness the plans we are making to obliterate his name. He's talking about the portrait that was painted. So here he's saying we want no trace of Hamo, but then 2 panels later, we'll hang his portrait so he can look down and see all of the things we're doing to destroy his legacy. But the artist keeps the sword from Hamo and he cuts his hand and he's the first to die. I thought the artist maybe had cursed the painting. He had some kind of black magic, but apparently not, because he's the first one to die. unless he's just a very clumsy black magic person and didn't realize his spell. He ended up falling into the the pain of his own spell that he had on the portrait. But either way, then later they remove that. They see that the hand is missing from the painting. That was the hand that was cut from the sword. And so then they say, uh-oh, that's very strange. But they pass it off as just maybe the portrait was smudged while we were, moving it. And then all of a sudden, the gun of Hamo explodes in the hands of another man, and he too perishes. And they're very freaked out at this moment, as we see here. An awful thing has happened, Krill. Our dear friend Jintar says, I know before you tell me, Marzo. Look at the painting. And the other hand has disappeared. And then they find out that there was a caravan on the way to take the body to the river to get rid of it. And the only thing left on the portrait is the eyes of the Hamo. And they get very freaked out. And he wants to gouge out the painting. But the other Krill says, no, don't do it. But he knocks him back and he cracks his head and he dies. And then this strange mist, which to me looks more like a plant vine growing out of it, but I'm assuming it's some kind of a mystical mist, comes out and it strangles or it kills him with the knife. And they're all dead, all of the men that plotted against Hamo. And at the very end, it says, this is the most fantastic thing I ever heard of. How could? What are you staring at, Barak? And he says, nothing, absolutely nothing. So the painting was the curse, I guess. And Hamo cursed the painting right as the painter finished. And it was just a perfect storm of things, I guess, of evil happening. But to me, it's not that scary because it feels like the men plotted evil against Hamo and they paid with their lives, much as Hamo led a very evil life against the people he ruled over. So the two evils, to me, kind of canceled themselves out. Was it scary? Not so much. Not so much to me, as much as it is. I mean, I can tell you this panel right here, though, is scary. Let me point one panel out. This panel is very scary. He looks like he hasn't slept for at least 3 or 4 weeks. This man needs a good nap. He's very stressed out. Hamo must have really worked him to the bone. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. And the next story is titled, My Uncle Has Green Leaves. Right away, this story to me doesn't invoke any kind of fear. I'm thinking more of a sitcom. My uncle has green leaves. It's like his uncle is a plant and they have crazy, wacky adventures together. I don't know, right? But anyway, there are some scariness to the story. A few things. Let's find out, though. Let's find out. It takes place, it's an Uncle Thaddeus, and his nephew, Brutus, and their last name is Quirk. So it's Thaddeus Quirk and Brutus Quirk, Brutus being the nephew. The nephew is very timid, very shy, seems very fragile, very scared of the uncle, very nervous all the time around the uncle. And he has good reason, because the uncle is very mean, very nasty to him, calling him names all the time. And so at one point, the uncle escalates the situation so drastically that the nephew kills the uncle. And he gets a devious idea, and he takes the uncle and he buries the uncle, and the uncle basically inhibits, or I guess kind of develops into a plant. He's growing his uncle from the ground in the form of a plant, his dead uncle. That's very sinister. That's a little scary, right? And then at the end, he's going to get all of the uncle's possessions, but the uncle now is this giant plant that he's grown, and the uncle strangles him and kills him, right? So they both, again, the two evils cancel each other out. Let me just jump back because I want you to see a little bit. That was my explanation. So now we can just point out a few of the moments in the book that help spell this out for us. Here at the very beginning, Thaddeus Quirk was old and rich, well, they tell you right there, and interested only in his collection of bizarre blooms. Day after day, he tended them with loving care. So you see, he's all into his plants. He says, Pretty Mary Jane. Mary Jane as a plant. That's an interesting thing. I wonder if the artist had something in mind when he called it Mary Jane. He says, needs a tonic. Give me the spray gun marked Solution Z, my thimble-headed nephew. Right away with the mean comment. Why do you have to insult him right away? And then he says, I didn't ask you to concoct this stuff, idiot. Just pick it up and hand it to me now. And he hands it to him, and it's the wrong one apparently. See, this isn't solution C, you blasted lame brain. One whiff of this would kill my precious Mary Jane. So he's very angry, tells him, get away from me. And he knocks over some plants. And this is where it escalates. This is where the turning point. Right away, the uncle just completely escalates this beyond any normal, rational thought. He says, in about 10 minutes, you're going to be a lot sorrier after I've spoken to my attorneys and ordered them to revise my will. He's taking him out of the will for knocking over some plants. I guess it's been going on for quite some time. But he just decides all of a sudden, you're out of the will, I'm calling my lawyers. They'll be here in 10 minutes. I mean, that's crazy talk, right? You could have just threatened him and said, get out of here, you're not getting anything to eat, or I'm not letting you use the car for a week, or something, you know? No, I'm calling my lawyers. This instant, you're out of the will. You thimble-headed nitwit, nincompoopy-paw. Anyway. Let's move on here. But this is when Brutus gets very angry. And Brutus, look at him rearing back, and he strikes the uncle with a very strong left hook in the crack. The art is very good here. You see how he depicts the little stubbles coming out of the uncle's bald head. Very detailed work there. But then he feels remorse a little bit for saying, he's dead. I'm terribly sorry, Uncle Thad. I didn't mean to. But now, as he's sweating, that's sweat, that's not ants crawling up his face or anything like that. That's sweat. You see the evil, sinister look, and he says, oh, wait a minute. Hold on, running away. That's exactly what Uncle Thad would expect me to do. With him gone, I have nothing to fear any longer. And so now, he should have something to fear. But he says he doesn't. He snaps his fingers and he drags the uncle and he digs a humongous hole. Look at the size. This is a scary hole. I mean, is he digging a grave or is he digging a swimming pool? I mean, good grief. I mean, 10 people could fit in this. But then he throws the uncle into the grave, and here the artist messed up because he left the hair off. Now it's Thaddeus, but then he turns back to Brutus. So it's kind of, maybe that's a little bit of foreshadowing of what's happening here, because he buried him and now he's growing this plant. The uncle was the fertilizer for the plant. So I guess he feels like the uncle is fertilizing the plant and the essence of the uncle is coming out into the plant. The police are looking for him. They can't find him. Of course, they never find him. And then at the point where he says, I'll get right to the point, Mr. Quirk. According to the terms of your uncle's will, don't read it in here. There's a more appropriate place. Follow me. Well, now it's even more devious. Brutus could have left well enough alone, taken the uncle's possessions, had an estate sale, and moved away, or whatever he wanted to do. But no, he couldn't. He had to keep rubbing it in the dirt, let's just say, into the face of the uncle. And he says here, they read the will out in the greenhouse in front of the plant that is his uncle, that he knows was the uncle plant. The plant reminds me a little bit of The Little Shop of Horrors, if you know that play, the movie. And here he tells him, oh, I'm so upset, please leave. He leaves, but he says, but you know how I feel, don't you? How do you like being planted there? Not able to lift a finger to stop me from taking over your fortune. He's laughing. Well, of course, he gets it in the end, and he dies. The uncle consumes him, and these men, the lawyers or whatever, say, what happened? We don't know, and they leave. And we see a little bit of the uncle's face depicted here in the sunflower, this mutated sunflower plant. Now my thing is, the uncle kind of came out a little bit better because the uncle loved plants so much. And now he is one. In a way, he got what he wanted really in the end. He can be almost immortal as long as somebody waters and tends for this plant, right? Plants can live a very long time. So he's almost like he's rejuvenated until the police come, of course, and dig everything up looking for the nephew and the uncle's body, and then probably will kill the plant, and they'll both be dead at that point. But anyway, were you scared at that story at all? To me, it's just, again, two evil men that canceled each other out. It wasn't very scary. The scary part was that giant hole he was digging. How long did it take him to do that? That's scary. The third story is called A Terrible Surprise. And this story takes place in the jungle, and a hunter is hunting down these panthers, and he traps one of the panthers. But he's exploiting the animal because he's going to sell it to the circus. But another panther sneaks up and he doesn't notice it, and he gets attacked. But his assistants are able to kill that panther to get it off of him. But the hunter is freaked out after this. The entire time, the rest of the story, he's freaked out because he's like, how did this panther sneak up on me? How is it able? I'm so experienced. There must have been something to do with this panther. So he destroys the panther completely, has it skinned, and he wants it shipped away and everything. And but he still has the other panther that he's going to sell to the circus. And during the night, there's a noise, and he gets up and he goes out. And the panther is missing, the cage is open. And you think, oh no, how did this panther get away? And the two assistants, we were here, how did this happen? And just then, a panther leaps and attacks the hunter and kills him. And the two men think it could have been the male panther that escaped. But no, they look and they see it was the female panther that had snuck up on the hunter in the first place, that was killed, supposedly killed. And the only way they knew is because if we look now, let's look into the comic to see why. We see there's a paw print, there's an X on the paw of the female panther that first attacked him in the story. But we see it here, Those circus people will pay a fortune for a male like. And he says, it's the big boy's mate. And that gleam in her eye. And that's when he was attacked. But ever since then, you see the paw, and you see they free him. But there, he's very freaked out. And see here, he says here, how did that devil come up on me without me noticing her? Never happened to me before, not in 30 years in the tall. Oh, pardon me. Oh, little ghoulish babur coming up there. Oh, pardon me. Oh. Wow, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you with my strange bodily noises. But let's continue on. Let me read that again. How did that devil come up on me without my noticing her? Never happened to me before, not in 30 years in the tall grass. And then over here he says, either I'm losing my touch or that critter had mighty strange powers. Or it could just be you're getting old, 30 years hunting, maybe your sight is going out, your hearing. Maybe you just aren't as quick and nimble as you were as a young man. But no, he's too full of himself. I'm a great hunter. So it had to have been this panther was a devil panther, which we find out that it was because it apparently came back to life. We think here, as we see the cage is open, and we think that the panther did attack him, but no, this panther did not attack him. They see in the end, because the paw print there, that it was the other panther, the panther that must have been destroyed, unless the female panther then transferred into the male's body, and it became the devil beast with the X on the foot, right? But one part, if you're an artist or a writer, one thing that was scary about this story was that they didn't time it enough to fill all the pages. You see there's a big blank space here at the bottom. But I guess you could, if you wanted, you could make your own panel and continue the story and finish it out a different way. Because here they finish it with the paw print with the mysterious X. It belonged to, don't say the words, fool. Things like this can't happen. Well, apparently they did. And so that brings us now to the last story. And it is appropriately called The Last Laugh. So this story takes place between two brothers, and they are twins. Their names are Ronald and Donald. Do you think that the writer was eating a Big Mac when he wrote this story? Perhaps. Ronald is the down and out kind of loser brother, and Donald is the very smart brother who succeeded. And the story goes that the brother one day shows up, Ronald, the deadbeat brother, shows up and is just going to surprise his brother Donald and say, hey, how you doing? But Donald already knows everything. Somehow he knows everything. Now this is before the internet and before a lot of the electronic gadgets, so we have to reason to believe that Donald had some kind of connection with electronic devices. Maybe he made a deal with the devil, or maybe he just somehow cursed himself with these electronic devices. But somehow he knew right away what the brother was there for. The brother needed money to help pay off his debts. And the brother agrees, okay, I'll pay your debts, but I never want to see you again. And the brother Donald is very mean to Ronald, very mean to the brother that was the deadbeat. Again, very evil people. People when scary stories and bad things happen, we see that it's always when they're very mean, they're very devious, or they have, they're trying to weave a tangled web of deceit, right? That is usually when the evil occurs. So if there's anything we can learn from these stories, is don't practice to deceive the evil that you weave with the web. Don't worry, I will figure it out. I know there's a saying, and I'm butchering it very badly, but I will figure it out. Don't worry. It's tumbling around like a dryer, like a shoe in a dryer in my brain right now. I will figure it out. It will come out right in the end. Okay, don't worry. But anyway, if we can learn anything, is that once we have participated in evil, or we have devious thoughts in our mind, then we tend to attract negative things into our life, just as all of these characters and all these stories have. Don't we see that? But as we see in this story, Donald, very mean to his brother Ronald, but he does agree to pay off his debts. But he says, I never want to see you again. And so then Ronald says, hey, don't worry. I know, you won't have to see me. My word is my word. But Donald doesn't feel well, and Donald now needs pills. And he says, my medication, I need my medication. Well, Ronald's head now turns to his devious things. And he says, you know what, my brother Donald has been so mean to me. I'm not going to give him these pills. And Donald dies, because without these pills, he died. And now Ronald was going to take his place, because now he's thinking, ha ha ha, I will become Donald. I will be rich and famous now. And what happens is, because of the machines and all the technology, Ronald ends up getting it in the end. He flies off a cliff in a car. And so I will point that out to you. Let's just look at a few of the panels for that story. And for some reason right now, I'm getting a big hankering for some chicken McNuggets, right? Okay, you know what I'm talking? I keep saying Ronald and Donald. Thinking I need some chicken nuggets or maybe a sausage biscuit. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I need some McDonald's. And McDonald's is very bad for you. I don't eat McDonald's, but it's like a hypnotizing me. Ronald, Donald, chicken nuggets, quarter pounder, milk shake, apple pie. They don't have those anymore, do they? They don't do the fried hot apple pies. I don't think so. Anyway, here, let's go back to the story. And right here in the first page, we say, Ronald is showing up. He says, it's been 5 years since we've seen one another. Won't Donald be surprised when he spots that car and these threads? For a ne'er-do-well, I've done just fine. Hey, the door opened before I even pressed. And then the robotic voice, enter please, proceed to library, second door on the right. And then he comes in and says, Donald, how did you know? He's like, I've been aware of your plan to seek me out for over an hour, brother. You're looking well for over an hour. It's only been 1 hour. It's very strange. So the brother's like, hey, I need help from my brother, Donald, an hour ago. You're thinking this is weeks coming, right? He had to go get a car. He had to get some nice clothes. Apparently he was able to do all of this in 1 hour. That's amazing. Ronald has some skills. I don't know why he can't utilize that. If he can, get a car and some nice threads, he could be a wheeler and dealer at a used car lot, maybe. He's very quick with his actions. That doesn't make any sense, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, move on. I think we'll have to cut that part out, maybe. He says, I'm in the pink, Don. Never felt better in my life, or more successful either. Just put over a big deal. You were always an incurable liar, Ronald. The only deal you hope to pull over is on me. And he knows it. See, that's where they were saying. And he's like, well, what makes you say that, Don? I've got a big car, which you've borrowed from one of your gambler friends to impress me. And unless I've zeroed in on the wrong frequency with this little gadget, you have exactly 85 cents in your pocket. He has a gadget that can tell you how much money is in the pocket. That's what I'm saying. He has some kind of evil connection to these electronic devices. He's very advanced in this house. But did he make the devices, or did the devil? We don't know. It doesn't say. Anyway, the gangsters show up. The brother goes out and says, hey, I'll pay your bosses, I'll pay these debts for you. The gangsters can't beat him up because he's got some force field around him, as you see. And then, but the brother's not looking so well in this panel. You see his eyes are kind of getting dark, and the sweat is now pouring off his face. He says, as a parting brotherly gesture, I will permit you to spend the night here. But if our paths ever cross again, these IOUs will go to my attorneys immediately, and you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I see some commonalities in these stories. They like to use the attorneys to threaten each other, right? He threatens the attorneys. Well, it wasn't a threat. He's going to use the attorneys to write him out of the will. And in this one, he's going to use the attorneys to sue him for these IOUs he paid off. Lawyers are very scary indeed, and they utilize them a lot in this book. They keep throwing out, I'm going to stick my attorney on you. I may be a real creep, Don, but when I give my word, what's the matter with you? You look funny. He's like, it's been a trying day. I haven't been feeling too well lately. My medication, next room. He says, hold on, I'll get it for you. And then he's getting the pills and he realizes, he's like, why am I rushing for? For the first time in my life, I don't have to run. And then here, please, pills, need to save. How does it feel to crawl, champ? I've been doing it since I was a kid, and everybody decided you were a genius and I was no good. He turned the tables on him. The tables are turned. And then he says, I beg you, only seconds left. Now, if Donald knew that this medication was so important that he could die within minutes of not having it, don't you think, as smart as he was, that maybe he would just keep a little container, maybe one or two of the pills in his pocket at all times? That would be a good idea. I'm just saying. The brother dies and Ronald says, I'm taking over for Donald, right? And we see here, but then the gadgets come to life and he says, you never live to enjoy. And then crash, and there's a lot of, the whole place looks like it's falling apart. He says, you never live to enjoy. And then he freaks out, very scared look on his face here. This place is cursed, and he says here, this cursed place seems to have a life of its own. Got to get away before. And he jumps in the car and zooms away, but the car freezes up. It's an electronic device, of course, and it flies off the cliff like down on the weeds, and he dies. And then the police there come and they say, turn that dafted thing off, that laugh giving me goosebumps. Says, it is turned off. That sound we hear is coming from someplace else. Well, with that is the end of the story. He too died from his devious mind, doing evil things. And we see that every time. So if there's anything, really, we should not practice the evil. We should try to be positive. Don't always take out your aggression on others. Whenever you become devious in your mind and you have these thoughts of evil, that can turn on you. Because what we think we can attract. Positive attracts positive, negative attracts negative. And if there's anything we get out of these ghost stories in this book, which I don't know if they're ghost stories really, but they're semi-scary, they're definitely life lesson stories to say, hey, do unto others as you would have, do unto you. And in this case, they were all very mean people, very evil-spirited inside. And they paid the price for it in the end. So try to be a better person if that's something we can learn from these stories, whether they're scary or not. So now, let's get the official rating of the Demon Baby for the scariness of this book. I'm not sure what it will be, because her idea of scariness can only be dreamed of in your nightmares. But let's find out. Let's see, is the Demon Baby aware and awake to tell us her official rating? There is the Demon Baby. She's there. She doesn't see, oh no, she is aware. The Demon Baby is aware now. So now, Demon Baby, give us the official rating for this book of scary stories. There it is, one head spin. Will she give us any more? That's just one head spin. Okay. There's two. Okay, 2 head spins. She gave us 2 head spins for this book of scary stories. Let's see any more head spins from Demon Baby. She obviously saw something in here that was of fear to her that someone might be scared of. That seems like, I don't know. No, okay. We can tell that right there tells us she is done. And there will be no more head spins. So 2 head spins. 2 head spins for this book of ghost stories? Well, I have to say, it actually might be higher than I thought, because I wasn't totally in fear. I didn't have a lot of fright in me from these stories. The stories more, I felt like the people in them got their just deserves, because, you know, once we tangle a web of terror, we have to pay the price. No, that's not the actual saying. I believe it's something like, isn't it, once we practice to deceive, a tangled web do we weave. Yes, something to that effect. I like to say, if there's anything we can learn from this book, it's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Because almost everyone in that book was very mean to each other, and they all paid the price for it. So now that we have our rating, and we've seen the book, it is time for me to bid you farewell. But I say to you, when you're out and about, maybe you're at the garage sale, maybe you're at an antique shop, maybe you're at a friend's house with a lot of clutter. If you come across these scary stories, don't be frightened. Maybe pick one up and read it. It may only cost you a few coins, because to me, these books are very much a historical event of long ago. These were stories that have been passed down and told for many years, and now you can enjoy them too. Maybe they won't be too scary. Maybe they're just frightculous, haha. But maybe they're funny. But anyway, it's just a cheap form of entertainment in one way or another. If you ever come across one of these books, I would implore you to pick it up and read it. But maybe pay for it first, so you're not scolded by the clerk of the store or the keeper of the garage sale. But what I would say is, go ahead and get the book, because the entertainment inside can give you such a joy or such a fright as it may be. Don't worry about the condition of the book. To me, the more torn up the book is, the more spooky it is. The folded pages, the ripped pages, the damage all down the spine, all crumpled and everything, and the pieces out of it. Maybe there's names written on it. Don't worry, it's still the same. It could be Mike or Steve's comic from long ago, but now it can be yours for just a few coins, probably. Maybe a few dollars. I wouldn't go more than that for a book of that condition, even though you just want to read it for entertainment. I still wouldn't buy it all crumpled up a lot of money. Some people get a little carried away and think because the book is old, it's very valuable. Ooh, I can't even say it. It's very valuable. But in reality, the condition has a lot to do with the value of something, yes? But to you, it could be very valuable because it will give you much joy in reading it. So that 50 cents could be like it's worth $50. But don't pay that much for the book, please, please. Unless you're a collector and you're trying to build some nice collection. But to me, just get the books and enjoy them and read them. They've been hidden away for so long, and they've been there scattered about. Stop using them for the bird cage lining or the presents, and read them and give them to someone else maybe later to enjoy. Because these scary stories can bring you such a fright and such a scare. But either way, enjoy these books for what they were intended for, entertainment. And with that, I must bid you farewell for now. But we can meet again. If you've enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you subscribe. And maybe if you really like it, you could click that like. Very simple. It's not scary at all. I won't come and, stalk you in the middle of the night if you don't. But either way, it's very much appreciated. And with that, I will bid you farewell. I am Count Frightculous, and I wish you a chilling, spooky, yet peaceful scariness. Well, I don't know if that was the best way to end it. No smoke came out of the tube. I thought there was going to be some smoke. Wait, hang on, let's see. Will it come up there or not? I don't know. We were supposed to have some smoke there come up. So this is how we were supposed to end the show, like this. Oh, here we go. There's the smoke. Farewell!